All right, our heat went out, and what's happening is our jets, as you can see right there, they were all clogged up just with rust and deterioration. I cleaned them out, took each one of them out. It's pretty easy. You just take this plate out, pull these jets out. They have little screws right in here. So those come right out. Take all of them out, all 5 of them out. Cleaned them out, sanded them out, and I put them back in, and everything fired up, tested out, worked out great. Was putting my tools up, and the unit shut down. So what had happened is that I had cleaned all the rust out of them, and where these jets connect together at is a little, kind of like a zipper. They slide together, put a screw here to hold them in place. So what had happened is I had removed so much material, just the rust and corrosion out of there, that a lot of the flame was coming out and right between where these go. So the flame comes out here, but there was also flame coming out here, and it was blowing up and coming under this plate. So this particular sensor, I was getting 5 blinks on the board. There's a little light. It's a little dark right here. You can't hardly see it, but there's a light right there, and it has codes on it. So if it blinks 5 times, you can look on the back of your cover, and right here it tells you, it's not focused very well, it tells you if it's blinking how many times, what the fault code is on it. So real quick, there is a few things that we've done. Last year I was having some issues, and what was happening is there is a pressure sensor right here. It's about as big around as maybe a small mayonnaise jar lid, and it's got a little tube that goes down, and that tube hooks to this little squirrel fan right here. What this fan does, it's a small fan, and it clears all the gas and carbon monoxide that builds up in the system from the gas heating the heat exchanger tubes. It creates a little bit of vacuum right here, a little bit of suction, and that suction causes that little diaphragm to close in that switch. Well, what had happened is this was all clogged up. The squirrel cage motor was rusted out and bad, so we replaced that motor with a little squirrel cage in there. So that got us fixed up, because when we satisfied, you sucked on this here, it satisfied this switch. That's a separate exhaust. It exhausts here. So it comes on if this fan is operating and it's creating enough vacuum here. It tells the system that it's okay to operate and start the gas. Once the gas was started, what happened is it was rolling out, and it was heating this sensor up, telling it, man, it's too hot in here. We've got some flame rollout out of our system. Shut the system down. So it was shutting back down after we cleaned all those out. I took a little short video, and what was happening is these flames were rolling out, not going, of course there was flames going up into the tubes here, but there was also flames not going into the tubes. You can see where this pan, I'm going to stick this in place where you can see it. This pan was rotted out in the back, up against that wall. Those wires where they belong. This is the igniter on the left. The wire on the right looks very much like an igniter, but it's not. It's basically a temperature gauge or a thermocouple. Not sure what Rheem calls it in their manual, but it senses if it ignites this, and each one of these ignites from the other. So the gas is flowing through the end of those little zipper tubes that we talked about earlier. If this last jet doesn't light, this sensor right here tells it, hey, even though you've got fire down here, you don't have fire down here, but you've still got gas going through all of these jets. So in essence, you're filling this compartment up with raw gas, and it says we're not sensing any heat down here, let's shut it down while it's still safe. Save some big issues. This sensor right here is the flame rollout sensor. So this is where we had problems with it. It had tripped this sensor. This particular sensor has a reset button on the top of it. You can see that little tiny button right on the top of it. I had to reset that button and figure out why I was getting over temped in this compartment. And what it was coming from is what we talked about earlier, is where these tubes come together, the tolerances weren't tight enough. So I tightened them up and restarted it. Everything started up, and I wound up with not a flame down here. I got these pinched together too tight, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4 flames, but our fifth tube didn't ignite. This told us that wasn't igniting, and immediately it shut the whole system down after a few seconds and said, hey, we're pumping raw gas out into this area and we need to shut down. I pulled these 2 tubes back out and I tightened those tolerances up, and I've already lit this. And so I'm going to put this plate back in place so you can see this hole. That hole was burnt in there, and a lot of that heat, those rollout flames, it probably caused that over time. We will likely replace this unit in the near future. If you can notice, this particular unit is 20 years old, so you're getting a lot of rust. We've already replaced that. We replaced the board. This is your squirrel fan here. This is your set of contacts and your capacitor. So there's not a whole lot. Little transformer, I think, is what's going on right here. There's not a whole lot to these units, but they do have some safety switches in place that can create you some headaches. I also broke a pan. There was some roofers out here working on the house, and I got a piece of metal and I broke a pan. And so we're just going to put this pan up under this pan, basically to close up the hole that used to be in the back. So we now have a new piece of metal under there, and I trimmed out under that pan so we would have a place for our sensor to still pick up the heat. Basically, we just gave us a new surface there. So these are laying in place. I'm going to go ahead and put the switch back in on the disconnect, put the bar in. All right, we should get a red solid light. Got the red solid light. We've got air venting out of here from our squirrel fan because our switch here is satisfied that we're doing everything we should. We should get an ignition down here on the bottom. All right, we got ignition, and all 5 burners came on. So what will happen is this will heat up. It'll give it just a few seconds to heat up, and it will continue to burn and operate as normal. Earlier, this 5th burner wasn't heating up. It wasn't lighting because it was pinched in that area where these 2 come together. So this switch here was telling the whole system to turn off. It's going down to about 27 tonight, and I think what I've accomplished today will probably make my wife pretty darn happy tonight.